My sister committed identity fraud against my brother. My mother and I found out 3 months before he did. And we said nothing. He discovered it sitting across from a mortgage specialist at an RBC branch in Oakville. On a Tuesday afternoon in March. Watching a line of credit he'd never opened appear on his credit report. He hasn't spoken to me since. That was 2.5 years ago. I still catch myself reaching for my phone, sometimes to text him something pointless. A Leafs score. Something dumb that happened at a job site. And then I remember he blocked my number before spring was over. I want to explain how we got here. But I've been telling myself a softened version of this story for 2 years now, and that version isn't honest. So I'm going to try telling it straight this time. My brother is 38. 5 years older than me. Growing up, he was the kind of older brother who made things look effortless without being arrogant about it. He just worked quietly and got results. He put himself through an accounting degree at Western, passed his CPA exams on the first attempt, got hired by a mid-size firm in Oakville, and eventually made senior manager. He bought a condo at 31, saved aggressively, married his wife, a woman who'd started in customer service at the same RBC branch, where he'd eventually discover what my sister had done, and worked her way up to branch manager. They were saving for us a house in Oakville or Milton. Something sensible with a backyard. He never asked our family for a cent. Not when he was 23 and studying for exams on a tight budget. Not during any rough stretch after that. Never. He just handled things and showed up for Sunday dinners at my mother's house in Hamilton and brought a decent bottle of wine and helped clear the table without being asked. His name is Bram. I want you to remember that. My sister is 25. The youngest of the three of us, 7 years younger than me. And she got a different version of our parents. More patient. More willing to smooth rough edges before they became problems. She's genuinely smart in a creative way. Did a graphic design diploma at Mohawk College. Spent a couple of years doing freelance social media and branding work. Talked at every Sunday dinner about building a boutique agency. She had the ideas. She made mood boards, sent pitch decks, drafted business plans. Then the clients dried up the way freelance work does. She had a bad breakup, a rental situation that fell through, credit card debt that crept faster than she expected. She moved back into my mother's house in October. Her name is Kira. My mother is 61. She retired early from the Hamilton Wentworth School Board and still lives in the detached we grew up in on the east end of the city. Same street, same kitchen table, same spare rooms, made up in case any of us needed them. She loves all three of us with a fierce, uncomplicated love that sometimes makes her blind to what she's actually looking at. I'm 33. Project coordinator for a construction company in Stony Creek. I have an apartment, a truck I'm almost done paying off, a decent enough life. I also have a habit of avoiding confrontation in my family that I had never fully reckoned with until everything came apart. My sister called me on a Thursday night in December at 11 o'clock. I could hear she had been crying for a while before she picked up the phone. She told me not to freak out, then she told me she'd applied for a personal line of credit 6 months earlier. Her own credit score was too low. She'd maxed 2 credits and missed some payments, leaving her somewhere in the low 500s. So she'd used my brother's name and social insurance numbers instead. She told herself it was temporary. She told herself she'd pay it down fast, close the account, and he'd never have a reason to look at it. She got approved for $27,400 through TD. She used most of it. 3 months of rent during a stretch with no income. Equipment for her freelance work. Paying off her own credit card balances. She'd been making minimum payments on the TD account to keep it from going delinquent. She couldn't pay it back in full. She'd been lying awake every night for months. I sat on my couch for a long time after she stopped talking. The first thought I had, and I'm ashamed to write this, but it's the truth, was, does he know yet? She didn't think so. I told her I needed to think. I'd call her tomorrow. Instead, I drove to Hamilton the next morning. I sat across from my mother at the kitchen table and told her everything. My mother's face went gray. She put her hands flat on the table. Then she started to cry. We talked for nearly 4 hours. My mother kept coming back to the same thing, the criminal exposure. Identity fraud under the Criminal Code of Canada is serious. A conviction means a record, and a record follows you into every job application, every lease, every background check for the rest of your working life. My sister was 25. My mother looked at me and said, she made a terrible mistake, but she can't lose everything for it. She's still so young. And I agreed. I told myself we were protecting her. That wasn't entirely a lie. But sitting here now, I think I was also protecting myself from the conversation I would have had to have with my brother if we came forward. That conversation felt impossible. The look on his face when he found out we'd known. That look I could only imagine. Terrified me more than I admitted. So we made the secret someone else's problem, called it compassion, and went home. We gave my sister clear conditions. Get a job immediately, put as much as possible toward the debt every month, and pay it off before it ever caused a problem. She nodded, she promised. She got a part-time position at a coffee shop on Upper James. Those months were strange. Kira made $800 bi-weekly, and put $200 of it toward the line of credit. I did the math once in my head and set it aside, because looking directly at it was unbearable. At that rate she'd be paying it off for 11 years. I knew that wasn't a real plan. I think my mother knew it too. We didn't say it out loud. We had Sunday dinners, and my brother came, and he talked about the house they were looking at in Milton and a bridge project he was consulting on, and I sat across from him and laughed at the right moments and felt something quietly wrong in my chest the whole time. Kira watched him at those dinners in a way I hadn't noticed before. Eyes down when he was speaking. She picked at her food. Once, when he said something about his credit score, the way good credit compounds over time, how he wished he'd started tracking it earlier. She excused herself to use the bathroom and didn't come back for 10 minutes. I didn't say anything then either. 7 weeks into that arrangement, my brother was at the RBC branch where his wife worked. She was pulling his credit report as part of a pre-qualification review for their home financing application. She saw an inquiry she didn't recognize. Then she saw the TD account. She called him at his desk. He left work and drove straight to the branch and sat down with a specialist and watched the screen come up. My phone rang at 4:15 that afternoon. He said, "I need to come over." I said, "Of course. Come over." He arrived in under 20 minutes. He sat down at my kitchen table, not the couch, the table, and looked at me. His face was completely neutral. No anger, no red eyes, nothing. Just this very controlled stillness that I had never seen on him before. Like every expression he normally wore had been replaced by something deliberate. He said, "Tell me what you know." I didn't try to lie. Maybe it was the look on his face. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe I already understood that he knew everything, and there was no point. I told him. All of it. Kira calling me in December. Driving to my mother's the next morning. The decision we'd made. The coffee shop job. The minimum payments. The plan that wasn't really a plan. The 4 months of silence. He listened without interrupting. He nodded at certain points. Slowly. Like someone confirming information they'd already half suspected. When I finished, he said, "You've known since December." I said yes. He said, "That's almost 4 months. You sat across from me at Sunday dinner 4 times and didn't say a word." I said we were trying to protect her. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm going to the police station tonight to file a report. It needs to be on record." I said, "Please wait." I said, "She's your sister." I said she's terrified and she made a terrible mistake, but destroying her life won't fix anything. He stood up. He picked up his keys off my counter. He said, "She committed fraud against me. You and Mom found out and decided I didn't get to know. That's what happened here." I said his name. I started something about family. He stopped at my door and turned back and said, "While you're sitting here tonight, I want you to think about something. I want you to think about what you decided I was worth. The morning you sat at that table in December and chose not to pick up the phone." Then he left. Then my mother was at my apartment within the hour. Kira was already there. The 3 of us sat and tried to figure out what to do. Kira was barely coherent. My mother kept saying we needed to reach him, explain the position we'd been in, help him understand that we hadn't done this to hurt him. I called his number 6 times. Straight to voicemail every time. I left 2 messages I barely remember now. Something about being sorry. Something about needing to talk. He filed the report that night. We found out 2 days later when Kira received a call from a detective with the Hamilton Police Service. My mother and I drove to his house the following Saturday. His wife answered the door. She looked at both of us for a moment without saying anything. Then she said, "He knows you're here. He's choosing not to come to the door. Please don't come by again without calling ahead." She closed the door quietly, without drama. My mother cried the whole drive home down the 403. In the weeks that followed, my brother disappeared from our lives with a thoroughness that I still think about. He didn't send an angry message. He didn't make a scene. He just methodically removed himself. His number went straight to a not in service message. Whether he'd changed it or blocked us specifically, we couldn't tell. We were blocked on every social platform, or he'd deleted them entirely. His wife sent a single brief email to my mother explaining they would not be coming to Easter dinner, and that they needed space. No elaboration, no negotiation, no door left open. Easter came and went. My mother made the full dinner, roast, potatoes, everything the way she always did it. She set 4 places out of habit and caught herself halfway through folding the napkins. My sister and I ate mostly in silence. My mother excused herself about 20 minutes. And I could hear her in the kitchen for a while. The legal process moved forward through spring. The investigation took about 3 months. The Crown's office determined there was sufficient evidence to proceed. Under Section 402.2 of the Criminal Code, Kira's lawyer, a criminal defense lawyer in Hamilton who cost my mother $11,000, pulled directly from her RRSP, negotiated with the Crown. Kira pleaded guilty to 1 count of identity fraud. She received a conditional discharge, 2 years of probation, and if she completed it without incident, no permanent entry on her record. She was also ordered to repay the full outstanding balance on a court-enforced schedule. It was the best possible outcome given everything. It didn't feel like that. About 6 months after the RBC call, I was at my mother's place for Sunday dinner. The 3 of us, like every week. My mother had been distracted for a few Sundays running, quieter than usual, and I finally asked about it after we ate. She brought out a letter from the city of Hamilton, a notice about outstanding property taxes. The February and May installments hadn't been made. Between the lawyer's retainer and an emergency furnace replacement in April, the property taxes had slipped. She was behind by $4,240. I told her I'd help her sort it out. I sat down with her bank statements to get a clear picture. That's when I found it. Going back 4 years, there was a recurring e-transfer. $1,000. Same date every month, from an account I recognized by the initials. My brother. It had started the month after my mother mentioned at Sunday dinner that the roof replacement had come in higher than she'd budgeted, and it had continued every single month for 4 years without announcement, without acknowledgement, landing quietly in her account on the same date. Like it had always been there. It stopped in March, so I asked my mother about it. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said he'd offered after she mentioned the roof. He told her not to tell my sister or me because he didn't want us to feel bad. He told her to please not bring it up at dinners. He just kept doing it. $48,000. 4 years of monthly transfers. Never mentioned once. I sat at her kitchen table and felt something I don't have the right word for. Not exactly shame. Something colder. The slow understanding that I had misjudged the geometry of our family. Who was holding things up, how much of it was invisible, what it meant that it was gone. I reached out to a mutual friend of my brother's and mine. Someone we'd both known since we were teenagers in Hamilton. He texted back 2 days later. He asked me to stay. I'm sorry, man. My mother wrote him a letter. Long, handwritten, with everything in it. The apology, the explanation, the parts where she could see herself clearly now that it was too late. She said she'd confused protecting Kira with protecting the family, and understood now those weren't the same thing at all. She mailed it to his house in Oakville. It didn't come back as undeliverable. He'd received it. He didn't respond. That silence was harder than anything he could have said. Kira completed her probation, without incident about 14 months later. The conditional discharge was formally registered. She'd been paying down the restitution steadily, kept coffee shop job through the entire legal process, picked up additional contract work when she could. She moved into a shared apartment in Burlington with 2 roommates. She started seeing a therapist, went consistently, every 2 weeks without exception. Something changed in her over those months, a gravity she hadn't had before. She stopped making excuses in the way she used to, and started sitting with things instead. There was a heaviness to her that hadn't been there before any of this. And I think she'd accepted that it wasn't going away. One evening I found her looking at my brother's LinkedIn profile on my laptop. She hadn't heard me come into the room. She closed the browser when she saw me. Then she said quietly without looking up, he got his FCPA designation, fellowship level. That's hard to get, it takes years of work. I sat down across from her at the table. She said his wife got promoted. Full branch manager, it's right there on her profile. I didn't say anything. She said, I keep going back to September, before any of it. I keep thinking about what would have happened if I had just called him. Just picked up the phone and said, I'm underwater, I'm scared, I need help. She stopped and looked at her hands. He would have helped me, you know he would have. He would have sat down with me and figured something out. Probably would have helped me make a plan, and not even made me feel bad about needing one. I didn't have to steal from him. I could have just asked. She was right, we both knew it. There was nothing useful to say, so I didn't say anything. Last winter, my mother and I drove out to Oakville. We didn't call ahead. We found his street, a quiet crescent, and sat outside his house in the truck for 20 minutes. It was the semi-detached he and his wife had been saving for. The one the mortgage application had been for. The application that had brought everything out of the dark. There was a wreath on the door, a rope toy in the snow on the front lawn, chewed down to the knot. My mother's hands were in her lap. She said, we can't just show up at his door. I said, no. We sat there a while longer in the cold. Then I started the truck. I'm 33 years old and I don't have a brother anymore. That's the plain version of it. He's out there in Oakville doing well, by every indication. The FCPA designation, his wife's promotion, the dog with the rope toy. I'm genuinely glad he's doing well. That's not something I'm performing. The version of this story where he's miserable doesn't make what we did better. It just adds misery. What I sit with is this. My brother didn't remove himself from my life because of what my sister did. He removed himself because of what I did. I had 4 months where I could have called him. 4 months. 4 Sunday dinners, 100 moments where I could have said, "You need to hear this." I didn't. I chose Kira's comfort over his right to know. I chose the convenience of the secret over the difficulty of the truth. I called it protection the whole time. He told me to think about what I'd decided he was worth. We decided he was worth less than the discomfort of a phone call. My mother and I sat at that kitchen table in December and weighed his right to know against my sister's fear. And we chose my sister's fear. He processed that information. He acted on it. I can't find a flaw in his reasoning. I keep coming back to what my mother said that December morning when we were deciding. She said, "He can handle hard things. He's always been able to handle hard things." That was the logic we used to justify 4 months of silence. He's strong. He'll recover. He doesn't need to know yet. As if someone's capacity to survive something grants you the right to make them survive it without warning. As if being reliable means you deserve honesty less, not more. Kira is rebuilding, slowly and seriously, with a humility she earned in the hardest way. She deserves the second chance she is making for herself. I believe that completely. My brother chose not to give it to her. Or to me. Or to our mother. And I understand it. Forgiveness and relationship are different things. You can hope someone recovers without wanting them back in your life. He wanted us to be okay. He just didn't want to be in the room while it happened. My mother still sets 4 places at Sunday dinner, sometimes. She says it's habit, and I believe her. And neither of us says anything about it. The rope toy in the snow on that crescent in Oakville is what I see when I can't sleep. Not a dramatic image, just an ordinary one. A life being lived in a house that doesn't have room in it for the version of us that made the choice we made. A dog he walks on streets I'll never see. His wife coming home to an evening that doesn't include us. We wanted to keep the family together. What we kept together was the part of the family that had already broken things. The part that held us together left. He gave us exactly the silence we created the conditions for. Turns out silence is exactly as permanent as it sounds.